Hello, listener. It's 7:47 p.m. in Las Vegas. The sun set 23 minutes ago, and the Strip just turned on every light it has, which in Las Vegas is approximately 4 billion watts of electricity, saying, "We're open. We never close. Come spend money in the only city in America that was built specifically to separate you from your money while making you enjoy the experience." Right now, there are approximately 320,000 people on the Las Vegas Strip. Tourists, convention attendees, locals who work here, people celebrating bachelor parties and 50th birthdays, and winning streaks and losing streaks and everything in between. 320,000 people in a 4-mile stretch of desert that was nothing but sand and creosote bush 60 years ago, and is now the most concentrated entertainment district in the world. My name is David Morgan, 94.5 MKLAS. I do evening drive in Las Vegas, which means I play music for people sitting in traffic on I-15, wondering why they moved to a city where it's 108 degrees in July and the housing market makes no sense. Tonight, I'm not playing music because 12 minutes ago, something happened at the Mirage Casino that the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department is not calling an emergency yet, but which every single person in their dispatch chain is talking about in voices that are getting quieter and faster, which is how you know something is very wrong before anyone official will admit it. Here's what I know at 7:47 p.m. A guest at the Mirage collapsed in the casino floor at approximately 7:22 p.m. This is not unusual. People collapse in Las Vegas casinos regularly due to dehydration, heat exhaustion, alcohol, medical conditions, or the unique combination of all four that Vegas specializes in producing. Casino medical response is extremely efficient because casinos do not want guests dying on their floors. For the same reason restaurants don't want mice in their kitchens. It's bad for business, and there are regulations. Medical response reached the guest at 7:24 p.m., standard protocol. 2 EMTs from the Mirage's on-site medical team, which every major casino maintains, began assessment and treatment. At 7:27 p.m., the guest attacked both EMTs. Not erratic behavior from someone confused or in pain. Attacking, specifically biting. With what the security radio traffic I'm monitoring through a contact who works casino surveillance is describing as focused aggression and complete absence of pain response when security personnel tried to restrain him. At 7:31 p.m., one of the 2 EMTs who was bitten began showing symptoms. High fever that came on in less than 4 minutes. Behavioral changes that escalated from confusion to aggression in approximately the same window. At 7:35 p.m., that MT attacked the other MT and 2 security guards who were attempting to provide assistance. 4 people showing identical violent behavior in 13 minutes, all connected through bite exposure. In a casino that currently has approximately 17,000 people on its gaming floor. In restaurants, in shows, in hotel rooms, walking through corridors that all connect to each other in a specific way that casino architecture connects to keep you inside the building and spending money. At 7:40 p.m., Las Vegas Metro received 3 more calls from 3 different Strip properties describing similar incidents. The Bellagio, the Venetian, and Caesar's Palace. All within the past 20 minutes. All describing guests or staff attacking others. Biting is the primary assault method, and victims showing rapid symptom progression after exposure. Multiple casinos. Simultaneous outbreaks. 320,000 people on a 4-mile strip of desert that exists specifically to concentrate people in the smallest possible space while maximizing their entertainment and spending options. I need every person in Las Vegas right now to hear me say something clearly and without the drama that makes people make bad decisions. Do not go to the Strip right now. If you are on the Strip right now, I need you to stay exactly where you are and listen to what I say next, because the next decision you make is probably the most important decision you're going to make tonight. At 7:43 p.m., My producer tonight is Isabella Santos. Izzy has been with this station for 4 years. She's 29 years old. She grew up in Vegas and knows the city in ways that people who move here never quite understand. Izzy showed up at 7:38 p.m. because she heard me go live with emergency content. And she understood immediately that I was going to need someone running the board while I talked. She walked in carrying her laptop and a police scanner and a bag from In-N-Out because Izzy believes in being prepared. Izzy is pulling feeds right now. Casino security radio, Metro dispatch, fire rescue channels, the Clark County emergency management frequency that usually carries nothing but silence. She's writing notes on a legal pad while simultaneously monitoring 4 separate audio streams and eating a hamburger. And the fact that she can do all of this simultaneously is why Izzy Santos is the best producer in Las Vegas radio. At 7:45 p.m., Izzy slid me a note. It says, Convention Center. 12,000 people at tech conference. 3 reported incidents in past 15 minutes. The Las Vegas Convention Center is not on the Strip proper. It's immediately adjacent, and it is currently hosting CES Summer Showcase, a technology industry event that brings in 12,000 attendees who spend the day looking at products and spend the evening on the Strip spending the money their companies gave them for networking dinners. 12,000 people who have been distributed between the convention center and the Strip properties all day, mixing with the general tourist population, creating exactly the kind of high-density cross-contact environment that infectious disease specialists have nightmares about. At 7:47 p.m., the temperature outside is 97 degrees. Vegas in July doesn't really cool down until about 11 p.m., and even then, it only drops to the high 80s. The sun is down, but the heat is everywhere, radiating from the pavement, from the buildings, from the replica Eiffel Tower at Paris, Las Vegas, that is exactly half the size of the real one and is currently lit up with LED lights that use enough electricity to power a small town. That heat matters, and I'm going to tell you why in a moment when Dr. Chan from UMC calls in, because she's been listening, and she has information about what heat does to the pathogen. But first I need to address something that Izzy just flagged on the Metro dispatch channel. The Luxor, the pyramid-shaped casino at the south end of the Strip, has locked down its casino floor. Not evacuated. Locked down. Security has sealed all exits and is not allowing anyone to leave until they can assess who has been exposed and who hasn't. This is either the smartest or the most catastrophic decision a casino has made tonight, and which one it is depends entirely on whether the infected are already on the floor when the lockdown starts or whether the lockdown successfully contains them before they can spread. 17,000 people in the Mirage. Approximately the same number in each of the other major properties. The Luxor just locked down however many thousands were in the building when they made the call. That's tens of thousands of people in enclosed casino environments, and I don't yet know if those environments are prisons or fortresses, but we're about to find out. At 7:49 p.m., I'm going to take a breath and tell you what Las Vegas actually is before I tell you what's happening to it. Because if you're not from here, you won't understand why the city's design is going to matter more tonight than anything else. Las Vegas is not a city in the way other cities are cities. It's a machine built in the desert to do one specific thing, which is concentrate people in proximity to gambling and entertainment while making them feel like they're somewhere magical instead of somewhere that was built by corporations to extract money from them as efficiently as possible. Every casino on this strip is designed with one principle. Keep people inside. Keep them moving between gaming and dining and shows. Don't let them leave. Don't let them think about leaving. There are no windows showing you the outside world. There are no clocks telling you what time it is. The architecture is deliberately confusing, so you can't find the exit easily. Everything connects to everything else through interior corridors that make it nearly impossible to know where you are relative to the street. Tonight, that design becomes either our greatest asset or our worst nightmare. Because if the infected are inside those buildings, the architecture that was built to trap people's wallets is now trapping people's bodies. But if we can keep the infected out or contained, those same buildings become fortresses with security infrastructure that most cities would kill for. Every major casino has hundreds of security cameras, professional security staff, controlled access points, climate control that can maintain 72 degrees inside while it's 108 outside, food supplies for thousands, water systems that could support a small town. They're designed to be self-contained entertainment environments where people can stay for days without leaving. Tonight, we're going to find out if that's enough. At 7:51 p.m., Dr. Angela Chun from UMC Trauma Center called in. She's been treating patients from the early Strip incidents, and she has information that everyone in Vegas needs right now. Dr. Chun, you're on the air. She said, David, I've observed 4 complete progression cycles from bite to transition, and I need to give you the timeline because it's faster than other reported outbreaks. Bite to first symptoms, 7 to 10 minutes in the cases I've seen. Symptoms to complete behavioral transition, 12 to 18 minutes. Total timeline from bite to fully aggressive infected, 20 to 25 minutes. This is faster than the 30 to 50 minute timelines reported in other cities, and I believe the accelerated rate is due to the heat. The ambient temperature in Vegas tonight, even with sundown, is high enough that it's accelerating the metabolic processes that drive prion propagation. I asked her, what does that mean for people who were bitten in the first wave? She said, it means the window between exposure and danger is shorter than people think. Anyone bitten 20 minutes ago is already in transition or past it. The heat is not our friend tonight, David. It's making this faster. At 7:53 p.m., I broadcast that and let it sit because it needed to sit. 20 to 25 minutes in Vegas heat. Fort Worth had a livestock origin and crowd density. Arizona had heat that degraded the infected. Alaska had cold that suppressed them. Vegas has heat that accelerates everything in crowd density that compounds it, and casino architecture that concentrates it all in enclosed spaces where 300,000 people thought they were coming for entertainment. Stay on this frequency, because the Strip is about to learn what happens when the machine built to trap your attention traps something else instead. At 7:56 p.m., the Luxor lockdown decision was validated in the worst possible way. Security surveillance, which Izzy has been monitoring through a contact she has who works. Luxor surveillance and who has been feeding her live updates via text, confirmed that the lockdown was initiated after an infected individual was spotted on the casino floor, but before comprehensive assessment of how many others were already symptomatic, which means the Luxor has an unknown number of infected individuals locked inside a pyramid-shaped casino, with approximately 15,000 people who have nowhere to go. Izzy showed me the text at 7:57 p.m. It said, we have visual on 6 actives on main floor. Unknown total. Security engaging. And then, this is bad, David. This is really bad. I broadcast it immediately because the people inside the Luxor, and the also people who have family inside the Luxor, deserve to know what they're facing faster than official channels will tell them. And because my job tonight is not to manage panic, it's to give people information that helps them make better decisions than they would make without it. At 8:01 p.m., Las Vegas Metropolitan Police issued their first public statement. It was brief and careful and said that LVMPD was responding to multiple violent incidents across the Las Vegas Strip and adjacent properties, that they were coordinating with casino security and medical services, and that visitors should follow directions from security personnel and remain calm. The statement did not use words like outbreak or infection or evacuation. It used words like incident and situation and coordination. Izzy looked at me and said, they don't want to cause a panic that crashes the Strip. I said, the Strip is already crashing. They're just not saying it yet. At 8:03 p.m., I received a call from someone I'm going to name because his position and his information matter more than his privacy tonight. Marcus Webb, Director of Security at the Palazzo. Marcus is 51 years old, 28 years in casino security, former Metro detective, knows the Strip better than anyone I've worked with in 15 years of Vegas radio. Marcus called because he's been listening and he has tactical information that changes the picture. He said, "David, I need you to broadcast something specific to people in casino properties right now. The casino floor is the worst place to be, not because of infected concentration, though that's a factor, because of crowd behavior. When people panic in a casino environment, they move toward exits they can't find because casino architecture deliberately obscures exits. They cluster, they push, they create compression injuries and trampling situations before anyone even gets bitten. I've seen it in fire evacuations and crowd events. Tonight is going to be exponentially worse." I asked, "What do you recommend for people inside properties right now?" He said, "If you're in a hotel room, stay there. Lock the door, stay away from windows, monitor information. If you're on the casino floor and you have the option to get to a hotel tower, take it. Hotel towers are easier to secure floor by floor than casino floors, which are open plans designed to be impossible to section off. If you're in a restaurant, lock the doors if you can. If you can't, move to the kitchen. Commercial kitchen doors are heavy and industrial. If you're in a show, stay in your seat until security gives you specific direction. Theaters have limited access points, and security can control them." At 8:06 p.m., I broadcast Marcus's guidance and added my own. If you are somewhere in Vegas right now that has a lockable door between you and other people, lock that door. The recommendation we're seeing across multiple outbreaks is that secured spaces with climate control are survivable for extended periods. Do not leave a secure space to look for family members or to try to evacuate unless you have specific information that your current position is compromised. Izzy wrote on her legal pad, "That's good." Keep saying variations of that. People need to hear it multiple times before they believe it. At 8:09 p.m., the convention center situation evolved. The 12,000 attendees of the tech conference had been in sessions throughout the afternoon and had begun the evening social events at approximately 6:30 p.m., which means they were distributed between the convention center's meeting spaces and the Strip properties when the first incidents occurred. The convention center security team made the decision at 8:04 p.m. to lock down the facility and implement their emergency protocols, which include securing all attendees in the main exhibition hall, the largest single space in the facility, which can hold all 12,000 if necessary. The text Izzy received from her convention center contact at 8:09 p.m. said, "Moving everyone to main hall now. 4 suspected infected being isolated in service corridors. Security armed and positioned. We're doing this by the book." By the book. Las Vegas has more experience managing large crowds in crisis than almost any city in America. The October 1st shooting in 2017 taught this city how to coordinate emergency response across multiple properties and how to manage mass casualties and how to make decisions fast when the book doesn't have answers. The security professionals working tonight learned from that night. They know what panic looks like, and they know what organization looks like, and they know the difference between the two. At 8:12 p.m., Dr. Chun called back. She'd been coordinating with the CDC through UMC's emergency channels, and she had an update that I need to share exactly as she gave it to me. She said, "The CDC has confirmed through analysis of blood samples from Vegas patients that this is the same prion-based pathogen identified in other outbreaks, but the Vegas presentation is showing accelerated kinetics consistent with elevated ambient temperature effects on protein misfolding rates." What that means in practical terms is that infected individuals in Vegas are progressing through their acute phase faster, but are also degrading faster. The heat that's accelerating the initial progression is also accelerating the physical breakdown of infected tissue once they transition. An infected person in Vegas heat might remain mobile for 45 to 60 minutes instead of the 90-minute baseline we see in temperate climates. She paused. She said, "But David, they're also much more aggressive during that shorter window because the metabolic acceleration affects behavior. They're faster, they're more focused, and they're not showing the same degradation pace we saw in hot climates like Arizona, where extreme heat killed them quickly. Vegas heat is hot enough to accelerate, but not hot enough to immobilize. It's the worst possible temperature range." At 8:15 p.m., I'm going to do something I've been meaning to do since this broadcast started. And Izzy has been giving me the look that says you need to do this now because we're going to be here all night and people need to know what this is. If you've been listening since 7:47 p.m., if this frequency has been the thing connecting you to what's happening across Vegas right now, then you're listening to something that exists because Vegas needs local voices during crisis. Class 94.5 is not a corporate station with a crisis response team. It's me, it's easy, it's a frequency, and it's a transmitter on Black Mountain that reaches the entire Vegas Valley and 50 miles in every direction on a clear night. If this broadcast helps you tonight, hit subscribe on our YouTube channel if you're watching this later. Tell us in the comments where in Vegas you are right now, what property you're in, what you're seeing. And if you want to support what we're doing beyond that, the Buy Me a Coffee link is in the description. Izzy and I are going to be here as long as Vegas needs us to be here, and coffee is going to be part of that equation. Support local radio, because tonight is exactly why it exists. At 8:18 p.m., the Mirage situation, which started this entire outbreak at 7:22 p.m., had evolved in a way that Marcus Webb described to me as the best-case scenario for casino containment, but the worst-case scenario for the people involved. The Mirage security team, working with Metro officers who had arrived on scene, had successfully isolated the infected individuals and the people who had direct contact with them to a service corridor behind the casino floor. They've established a secure perimeter using casino security personnel at every access point to that corridor. They're treating it as a containment zone with no entry or exit until hazmat assessment can be completed. The number of people in that containment zone, 47. The number of confirmed infected among those 47, unknown, but estimated at 8 to 12 based on known exposure timelines. 47 people in a service corridor in the Mirage. Some of them infected and dangerous. Some of them exposed, but not yet symptomatic. Some of them uninfected and terrified. All of them locked in together, because the math of containment says that risking 47 people is better than risking 17,000. At 8:21 p.m., Izzy flagged something on the Metro channel that I need to address, because it's going to affect evacuation options for everyone in the city. Interstate 15, the main north-south artery through Vegas that connects to Los Angeles and Salt Lake City and carries approximately 300,000 vehicles a day through the valley, is experiencing severe congestion as people attempt to leave the city. Both northbound and southbound traffic is gridlocked from the Strip to the Speedway, which is a 10-mile stretch that is normally 15 minutes and is currently unmovable. The I-15 through Vegas is not like highways in other cities. It's elevated, it's constrained, and when it backs up, there are limited alternatives because Vegas is in a valley surrounded by mountains, and there are only so many roads out. If the I-15 is locked, tens of thousands of people trying to evacuate are stuck in their vehicles in 97-degree heat with nowhere to go. I broadcast a specific recommendation at 8:23 p.m. If you are not currently on the highway, do not attempt to evacuate by vehicle. The roads are not viable. If you are already on the highway and you're not moving, assess whether you can safely exit and return to a secure building. Being stuck in a car on an elevated highway with no movement and declining fuel is not a position you want to be in tonight. At 8:26 p.m., the Luxor surveillance contact sent Easy an update It made both of us go quiet for a moment. The text said, "Active count now 14 visual. Security holding perimeter at tower elevators. Main floor lost. Estimate 2,000 people moved to towers. Estimate 13,000 still on main floor or in lower retail. 13,000 people on a casino floor with 14 active infected, and that number growing every 25 minutes through each bite cycle. The Luxor made the lockdown call 50 minutes ago. In 50 minutes, the situation inside that pyramid went from manageable to catastrophic. At 8:29 p.m., I took a call from a listener who gave her name as Patricia and who is currently in a hotel room at the Bellagio on the 28th floor. She said she'd been in her room since 6 p.m. She'd heard something happening in the corridor about 40 minutes ago, and she hasn't opened her door since. She said she can hear sounds in the hallway that she's been trying not to think about too specifically. She said, "I'm okay right now. I have water and food, and my room is locked, and I'm 28 floors up. But I need to know, how long do I stay here?" I said, "Patricia, you're in the best possible position. You're in a secure room in a tower with climate control and supplies. The recommendation from security professionals working this crisis is that you stay exactly where you are until you receive official clearance that your floor is secure. Days if necessary. Do you have enough supplies for multiple days?" She said, "I have the minibar and room service leftovers, and I can fill the bathtub with water. I can make it work." I said, "Then make it work. You're safe. Stay safe." She said, "Thank you." Then she said, "David, can you keep broadcasting? I need to hear a voice that's not just in my head." I said, "I'm not going anywhere." At 8:32 p.m., Izzy looked up from her scanner and said something I want to share exactly as she said it, because Izzy grew up here and she understands Vegas in ways that I'm still learning after 15 years. She said, "You know what Vegas is really good at? Continuing to function while something terrible happens in one part of the city. October 1st, the shooter was active for 11 minutes, and the rest of Vegas kept going because that's what Vegas does. Tonight is bigger than October 1st, but I promise you, there are casinos on the Strip right now that are still running table games in sections they've determined are secure, because Vegas doesn't stop unless it has to. And I don't know if that's the most American thing I've ever seen, or the most Vegas thing, but it's definitely one of them." She was right. At 8:34 p.m., Marcus confirmed that the Palazzo, his property, was still operating table games in their high-limit room on the 3rd floor, which they'd determined was isolated from the main gaming floor and secure enough to continue operations, with the whales who were there spending $20,000 a hand and who apparently did not want to stop just because there was a zombie outbreak downstairs. Vegas. I love this city, and I'm horrified by it in exactly equal measure tonight. At 8:38 p.m., the thing that had been building since the first incidents became impossible to ignore anymore. The Las Vegas Strip, from Mandalay Bay on the south end to the Stratosphere on the north end, a 4-mile stretch of hotels and casinos and entertainment venues that generates $42 billion a year in revenue and employs 150,000 people, was in coordinated lockdown. Not official, not announced, but every major property had independently made the same decision within minutes of each other. Secure the towers, control the casino floors, establish perimeters, and wait for organized response. GM Resorts, which operates 11 properties on the Strip, issued an internal security directive at 8:35 p.m. that Marcus shared with me because he believed people deserved to know. The directive said, all MGM properties are implementing modified lockdown protocols. Tower access restricted to key card holders. Casino floors being sectioned by security. All shows and restaurants suspended until further notice. Security authorized to use necessary force to maintain order and contain threats. Necessary force. In Vegas security terminology, That means exactly what it sounds like. At 8:41 p.m., the National Guard activation was announced by the governor of Nevada. Guard units from Nellis Air Force Base and the Las Vegas area armories were being mobilized with an estimated response time of 2 hours for initial elements, 3 to 4 hours for full deployment. 2 hours in a crisis where the progression timeline is 25 minutes means we're going to go through approximately 5 transmission cycles before military support arrives. In 5 cycles, assuming a conservative transmission rate of 3 new infections per active infected before they degrade, the math gets exponentially worse. Izzy did the calculation on her legal pad and showed it to me. If we start with an estimated 40 active infected across the strip right now, 5 cycles at conservative transmission rates produces approximately 9,000 infected by the time the guard arrives. I looked at that number, and then I looked at Izzy, and she said, "Yeah, that's why we need people to stay in their rooms." At 8:44 p.m., Dr. Chun called in for the 3rd time with information from UMC that I need to share because it affects tactical decisions people are making right now. She said, "David, we're seeing something in our patient population that's different from other outbreak reports. The Vegas patients who were exposed in the earliest incidents are reaching end-stage degradation faster than predicted. The first infected individual from the Mirage incident, the one who collapsed at 7:22 p.m., is now approximately 75 minutes post-transition and is showing significant motor function loss. He's not mobile anymore. The heat is degrading them quickly, just not as quickly as Arizona's extreme temperatures, but faster than temperate baseline." I asked, "What's the practical window? How long is an infected person dangerous in Vegas heat?" She said, "Based on what I'm observing, I'd estimate 50 to 70 minutes of peak mobility, with degradation accelerating significantly after the 90-minute mark. By 2 hours post-transition, they're essentially immobile. That's faster than the cold suppression we saw in Alaska, but slower than the rapid degradation in extreme desert heat. Vegas is in the middle. Hot enough to accelerate degradation, but not hot enough to kill them quickly." At 8:47 p.m., I broadcast that and added the critical piece. If the first Mirage infected transitioned at approximately 7:35 p.m., that's 72 minutes ago. He's approaching complete immobility. The infected from the earliest incidents are starting to stop. Every minute that passes is a minute closer to the first wave, degrading naturally. The question is whether we can contain the second and third waves before the math overwhelms the capacity to respond. At 8:50 p.m., I received a call from someone at the Venetian who identified himself as Tony Chun, casino floor supervisor, who said he needed to tell me something about what organized casino security can accomplish when they actually coordinate instead of operate independently. Tony said, "David, I'm watching something right now that I've never seen in 23 years in Vegas. The Venetian, the Palazzo, the Wynn, the Encore, they're all owned by different companies. They're competitors. They fight over market share every day. And right now, their security directors are on a conference call, coordinating a unified response across properties. They're sharing surveillance feeds. They're sharing infected counts and locations. They're coordinating perimeter positions. They're treating the northern strip as one security zone instead of 6 separate properties." He paused. He said, "Vegas security is really, really good at what it does when it decides to work together. And tonight it's deciding to work together because the alternative is watching the strip burn." At 8:53 p.m., that coordination produced the first inter-property evacuation when the Venetian successfully moved approximately 800 people from their casino floor through a secured corridor into the Palazzo Tower structure, which had been determined to be more defensible. 800 people moving through a secured corridor between 2 properties, while security from both properties held the perimeter. Tony said it took 17 minutes and they lost 0 people to infected contact. That's what Vegas security can do when it's operating at full capacity. At 8:56 p.m., the Las Vegas Convention Center, completed its consolidation of all 12,000 tech conference attendees into the main exhibition hall. The text Izzy received from her contacts said, "Everyone accounted for. 11,847 confirmed safe in main hall. 153 unaccounted for, presumed either evacuated independently or in the 4 isolated individuals. Perimeter secure. LVMPD working with our security. We're holding 11,847 people in one room. It's the largest single secured civilian population in the valley tonight, and they're holding because the convention center made fast decisions and executed them professionally." At 8:59 p.m., Izzy showed me something on her phone that she'd been tracking through social media monitoring. Videos from inside the Luxor were being uploaded to TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. Most of them were shaky phone footage from people hiding in various locations throughout the pyramid. But what they showed consistently was that the main casino floor was compromised and that people were climbing stairs to reach higher floors because the elevator situation was unclear. One video, uploaded 3 minutes earlier, showed what appeared to be approximately 200 people barricaded in the Luxor's second-floor nightclub, which has heavy doors and limited access points. Izzy said, "People are self-organizing. They're not waiting for security to tell them what to do. They're finding defensible positions and holding them. That's what happens when people understand that rescue isn't coming fast enough, and that survival means making your own decisions." Vegas tourists are not Alaska residents who grew up knowing how to be isolated, but they're adapting faster than I expected, and some of them are going to survive because of it. At 9:02 p.m., I want to address something directly to every person listening in a casino property right now. If you are in a position where you can barricade a door, barricade it. Use furniture, use whatever's available. Casino doors are not fortified, but they're solid and they're heavy, and a barricaded door is significantly better than an unsecured one. If you are in a group, designate someone to monitor information through phones or radio. Designate someone to manage supplies. Designate someone to make decisions about if and when you move. Don't operate by committee. In crisis, someone needs to be able to say, "We're doing this now." At 9:05 p.m., Marcus called back with an update from the Palazzo High Limit room where the whales had been playing through the outbreak. He said, "David, I need to tell you something that I find fascinating in a completely inappropriate way. The whales in the High Limit room just asked if they could get dinner service because they've been playing for 2 hours without food and they're hungry. Not room service, table service. In the High Limit room, while there's a zombie outbreak happening 3 floors below them." I said, "What did you tell them?" He said, "I told them I'd send someone up with menus." He said it completely seriously. At 9:08 p.m., the I-15 situation had worsened to the point when Nevada Highway Patrol issued a public advisory telling people to stop attempting to use the interstate for evacuation. The highway was at complete standstill from the strip to past Speedway, and vehicles were beginning to run out of fuel. People were abandoning cars on the highway and attempting to walk either back toward the strip or toward the suburbs. And both options in 95-degree heat were creating secondary heat exhaustion emergencies. An HP was now directing people to stay with their vehicles, run AC as long as fuel lasted, and wait for organized evacuation assistance that was estimated at no less than 4 hours away. 4 hours in a stopped car on an elevated highway in Vegas heat is survivable if you have water. Without water, it's not. At 9:11 p.m., Dr. Chun called with her 4th update. She said, "David, I need to correct something I said earlier about the degradation timeline. I'm now observing that the 50 to 70-minute mobility window I gave you is holding for infected who remain outdoors in the heat. But infected who enter climate-controlled buildings and stay there are showing significantly slower degradation. The casino climate control is preserving them longer than I expected. An infected person who enters an air-conditioned casino and stays there might remain mobile for 90 minutes or more, which is closer to baseline than to the accelerated Vegas outdoor timeline. That's important, David. The casino's keeping people cool to keep them gambling is also keeping the infected mobile longer. At 9:14 p.m., I broadcast that with the immediate tactical addition. If you encounter an infected individual indoors, they are potentially dangerous for longer than you'd expect based on how long they've been infected. Do not assume they're degrading on the outdoor timeline if they've been inside. Treat every infected encounter as high risk regardless of how long you think they've been mobile. At 9:17 p.m., Patricia from the Bellagio called back. She said she'd been listening continuously, and she wanted to report that her hallway had been quiet for the past 20 minutes, which was a change from the sounds she'd been hearing earlier. She said, "I think whatever was in my hallway either moved on or stopped. Should I look?" I said, "Absolutely not." I said, "Patricia, you have no information about what's in that hallway beyond the lack of sound." Silence could mean it's clear. It could mean something is standing still. Do not open your door to check. Stay where you are. She said, "Okay, I'm staying here. But David, I need you to keep talking. The silence in here is worse than the sounds were." "I'm talking, Patricia. I'm going to keep talking as long as you need me to." At 9:23 p.m., the 1st National Guard reconnaissance element arrived at McCarran International Airport, which had suspended all operations at 8:57 p.m. when an incident occurred in terminal, one involving 2 passengers from an arriving flight. The airport is approximately 2 miles from the south end of the Strip, and the Guard's initial deployment strategy was to establish a forward operating base at the airport before moving resources toward the Strip properties. Izzy's Metro contact told her that the Guard was bringing in approximately 200 soldiers in the initial wave, with another 800 following within 90 minutes. 200 soldiers for a Strip that contains approximately 300,000 people in various states of secured. Exposed or infected is not enough to change the picture immediately, but it's enough to begin coordinated operations that casino security can't manage alone. At 9:26 p.m., the coordination between casino properties produced something I want to describe because it represents the moment when Vegas security infrastructure started operating at the level it was actually designed for. GM Resorts, Caesars Entertainment, and Wynn Resorts, the 3 largest operators on the Strip, established a joint security operations center at an undisclosed location and began coordinating response across 18 properties simultaneously. They're sharing real-time surveillance feeds, infected counts, secure zone locations, and resource allocation. They're treating the Strip as one operational area instead of competing businesses. Marcus described it to me at 9:27 p.m. as the most impressive security coordination he'd seen in his career. He said, "We have eyes on every casino floor across the major properties. We know where the infected are, where the secure zones are, and where the danger points are. We're running this like a military operation now, and the military hasn't even arrived yet." At 9:29 p.m., that coordination produced the first large-scale civilian extraction when approximately 3,000 people were moved from the New York casino floor through secured corridors into the MGM Grand Tower structure. The operation took 43 minutes and was conducted with security from both properties plus Metro officers who had been staged at MGM Grand. 0 casualties during the transfer. 3,000 people moved safely through the Strip during an active outbreak, because casino security professionals made a plan and executed it with the resources they had available. At 9:32 p.m., Izzy flagged something on social media that I need to address because it's creating confusion and potentially dangerous behavior. Videos were circulating showing people evacuating casinos on foot, walking down the Strip, attempting to reach their cars or other properties, or somehow get away from the outbreak zone. These videos were being shared with captions like, "The Strip is evacuating, and everyone is leaving the casinos." I broadcast a correction immediately. Evacuation on foot through the Strip is not organized evacuation. It's people making individual decisions to leave secured positions and move through unsecured space. Those individuals are at significantly higher risk than people who remained in secured casino positions. Do not interpret social media footage of people leaving casinos as guidance that you should also leave. Every security professional I've spoken to tonight says the same thing. If you're secure, stay secure. At 9:35 p.m., the Luxor situation reached a critical point. The pyramid structure, with its unique architecture and its decision to lock down early, had become the most complex tactical problem on the Strip. Security had successfully secured the tower, structures, and had approximately 11,000 people safe in hotel rooms on the upper floors. But the casino floor, lower retail levels, and entertainment venues still contained an estimated 2,000 people in various pockets of the building, some secured in defensible positions, some trapped in areas that couldn't be easily defended, and an unknown number of infected moving through the lower levels. The text Izzy received at 9:37 p.m. from her Luxor contact said, "Preparing to implement floor-by-floor clearing with Metro and private security, starting from top and working down. Timeline estimate 4+ hours. This is going to be a long night." At 9:39 p.m., Dr. Chun called with what she described as the most significant medical observation of the night. She said, "David, we've successfully treated 2 bite victims with aggressive wound decontamination protocols within 5 minutes of exposure. Both patients received immediate irrigation with high concentration antiseptic. Both received 4 antibiotics that probably don't affect prions, but which we administered for any bacterial co-infection. And both have been monitored for 90 minutes post-exposure with no progression to acute phase." She paused. She said, "I'm not calling it a cure. I'm calling it possible mitigation with immediate intervention. The window is 5 minutes or less. After that, we're seeing universal progression. But if you're bitten and you can reach aggressive wound care within 5 minutes, there might be a chance." I broadcast that information 3 times in 3 different ways over the next 4 minutes because it's the kind of information that needs to be repeated and simplified and made absolutely clear. If you are bitten, you have approximately 5 minutes to reach aggressive wound decontamination. Antiseptic, irrigation, the deepest cleaning you can manage. It's not guaranteed, but it's the only intervention that's showing any effect. At 9:44 p.m., I took a call from a man named James, who is currently in a service corridor behind a kitchen at the Bellagio with approximately 23 other people. James works as a line cook. He was on shift when things started happening, and when the kitchen was told to lock down, he and the other staff secured themselves in the service area and have been monitoring the situation through a delivery entrance camera. James said, "David, we're okay back here. We have food, we have water, we have a loading dock door that we can open if we need to evacuate. But I need to tell you something. There are approximately 40 people trapped in the main dining room of our restaurant, and we can hear them, and we can see them on the kitchen monitor, and they can't get to us, because the only way from the dining room to the kitchen is through the main casino floor, and the main casino floor is not clear. Those 40 people have been in that dining room for over an hour, and they're running out of options." I asked, "Can the loading dock door be opened from the outside?" He said, "Yes, but that would require Metro or security getting to our loading dock, which requires them coming through an area that we don't have visibility on, don't know is secure." I told him I'd relay his location to Marcus and to the Metro coordination, and that if a rescue was possible, they'd attempt it, but that his position in the service corridor was secure, and he should maintain it until he had confirmation that rescue is actually available, and not just hoped for. At 9:47 p.m., Marcus confirmed he'd received James's location, and that a security team was assessing whether they could reach the Bellagio loading dock safely. He said, "We're trying, but the area between our current positions and that loading dock is unknown territory right now. We don't have surveillance coverage on all the service corridors, and we don't send people into areas we can't see. That's the hard calculus of tonight. People need rescue, and rescue requires risk, and the people who could provide that rescue are making decisions about which risks are acceptable and which aren't. At 9:50 p.m., the Las Vegas Fire Department issued a statement that I'm going to read verbatim because it represents the moment when official response acknowledged what everyone working the crisis had known for 2 hours. The statement said, Las Vegas Fire and Rescue is operating under mass casualty protocols in coordination with Las Vegas Metropolitan Police, National Guard, and casino security partners. Response to individual emergency calls is suspended in favor of coordinated large-scale operations. Residents are directed to secure in place and monitor emergency broadcasts for updates. Response to individual emergency calls is suspended. That means if you call 911 from a Vegas casino right now, they're not sending an ambulance to your specific location. They're coordinating mass response, and individual rescue is not available. I broadcast that with the necessary context. You are responsible for your own immediate security. Help is coming in coordinated operations, not individual responses. Make decisions based on your immediate environment and available resources, not on the expectation that calling 911 will produce immediate rescue. At 9:53 p.m., Izzy showed me a text from her convention center contact that made both of us exhale something we'd been holding. The text said, all 11,847 still accounted for. No new incidents in past 45 minutes. Perimeter still secure. Guard en route to support. We're going to make it. 11,847 people in one room. Holding for 3 hours and 9 minutes since lockdown. 0 breaches. That's what professional security coordination looks like when it's done right. At 9:56 p.m., the first infected individual from the Mirage initial incident reached complete immobility at approximately 134 minutes post-transition. Dr. Chun confirmed it through UMC's coordination with Metro. She said, the first Mirage infected has stopped moving completely. The heat in combination with the prion cascade has produced complete motor function loss. He's no longer a threat. 134 minutes. 2 hours and 14 minutes from transition to complete stop in Vegas heat with intermittent climate control exposure. That's the timeline we're working with. Every infected individual has approximately that window before they stop naturally. The question is how many people they infect during that window, and whether those secondary infections can be contained before they produce tertiary infections. At 9:59 p.m., I want to say something to Patricia in the Bellagio, and to James in the service corridor, and to Tony at the Venetian, and to everyone who's been with us since 7:47 p.m. You've been in position for over 2 hours. You've been listening to information that ranges from tactical to terrifying. You've been making decisions based on incomplete information in situations where wrong decisions could be fatal. And you're still here. You're still holding your positions. You're still thinking clearly enough to call in and share information that helps other people make better decisions. That's survival, not the dramatic version, the real version. The version where you sit in a room and listen to a radio and make the choice every few minutes to keep sitting in that room, even though every instinct says to move, to do something, to take action. Staying still requires discipline that action doesn't. And tonight, that discipline is keeping people alive. Stay with us. We're 2 hours and 12 minutes into this. The guard is on the ground. Security coordination is functioning. The first wave of infected is degrading. We're not through it yet, but we're getting there. At 10:03 p.m., the National Guard Forward Command arrived at the Strip and established coordination with the Joint Casino Security Operations Center. The Guard Commander, Colonel Sarah Mitchell, made contact with Marcus and the other security directors, and the first thing she said, which Marcus relayed to me immediately, was, You've done 90% of what we would have done if we'd been here from the start. We're here to support your operations, not replace them. That's a military officer who understands that the people who know the terrain should be leading terrain-based operations. The Guard is bringing firepower and coordination. Casino security is bringing knowledge of every corridor, every camera angle, every access point in 18 properties that span 4 miles of the most complex entertainment infrastructure in America. Together, they're about to start taking back the Strip. At 10:06 p.m., the first joint Guard casino security operation launched at the Mirage, where this started 2 hours and 44 minutes ago. The operation objective: clear the service corridor where 47 people had been contained since 8:18 p.m. Assess infected status of everyone in that corridor and establish whether any of the 47 could be safely extracted or whether the entire corridor needed to be maintained as containment. Marcus wasn't directly involved in the Mirage operation, but he's monitoring the security feeds, and he gave me a play-by-play at 10:09 p.m. Guard units entered the corridor with casino security. They found 18 infected individuals in various stages of degradation, several completely immobile, several still showing limited mobility. They found 29 uninfected individuals who had been sheltering in a storage room for the entire containment period, had barricaded themselves effectively, and had maintained separation from the infected in the main corridor. 29 people survived 2 hours and 44 minutes locked in a service corridor with 18 infected individuals by making one good decision and holding it. They barricaded a door and didn't open it regardless of what they heard outside. At 10:12 p.m., those 29 people were extracted through the service corridor to a Guard staging area and are being assessed for exposure. Marco Webb, one of the 29, called the station from a Guard medical tent at 10:15 p.m. because he'd been listening on his phone the entire time he was locked in that storage room, and he wanted to tell me something. He said, "David, when we first got locked in there, we could hear them outside the door, the infected, and we could hear other people, uninfected people, in the corridor asking us to let them in. And we didn't open the door because we couldn't verify who was infected and who wasn't, and opening the door meant risking everyone in the room. That's the decision we made. That's what we're going to have to live with. But 29 of us walked out alive because we made it. Marco, you made the only decision that had a chance at producing survival. The people in that corridor who didn't make it to the storage room, their outcome was determined before you ever had to decide about the door. You didn't cause what happened to them by not opening your door. You prevented what would have happened to 29 more people if you had opened it." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Thank you. I needed to hear that from someone who wasn't inside the room with us." At 10:18 p.m., the Luxor floor-by-floor clearing operation reached the 15th floor and confirmed approximately 300 people secured in hotel rooms on that level, all with doors locked, all monitoring information through phones or television or radio. The clearing teams, composed of Metro officers, casino security, and Guard personnel, were moving methodically and safely, which meant slowly, because slow and safe is better than fast and casualties. Izzy's Luxor contact estimated the full building clearance would take another 3 to 4 hours, which puts completion somewhere between 1 and 2 a.m. That's a long time for 11,000 people to maintain locked positions in hotel rooms, but it's achievable time. And the people in the Luxor towers have resources and climate, control, and the knowledge that help is actively working toward them. At 10:21 p.m., Dr. Chun called with updated medical data from UMC. She said, "David, we've now treated 8 bite victims with immediate wound decontamination protocols. Of those 8, 6 are showing no progression after 2 hours of monitoring. 2 progressed despite immediate treatment, suggesting either the wound severity was too extensive for decontamination to be effective, or the exposure was in a location with high vascular access that allowed rapid systemic spread." She paused. She said, 6 out of 8 is not a guarantee, but it's the best data we have. Immediate wound care matters. If people hear nothing else tonight, they should hear that. At 10:24 p.m., I broadcast the updated wound care data, and I'm going to broadcast it again right now because Dr. Chun is right that it's the most actionable medical information of the night. If you are bitten, immediate aggressive wound decontamination within 5 minutes produces survival in approximately 75% of cases based on current data. That's not a cure. That's a chance. And a chance is more than the 0% survival that untreated bites produce. At 10:27 p.m., the Joint Security Operations Center made the decision to begin evacuating the convention center's 11,847 attendees in organized groups to guard secured buses that would transport them to Nellis Air Force Base for assessment and temporary shelter. The evacuation would begin at 10:45 p.m. and was estimated to take 6 hours to complete. That's a massive logistical operation requiring coordination between convention center security, metro, guard, and bus transportation resources. But it's achievable because everyone involved has experience moving large crowds in Vegas. And tonight, they're just doing it under conditions that are slightly more life or death than a concert letting out. At 10:29 p.m., Izzy took a call on the tip line from someone who identified herself as Angela Reyes, security supervisor at the Link Hotel, which is a mid-strip property between the Flamingo and Harrah's. Angela said she'd been monitoring our frequency since 8 p.m., and she wanted to report that the Link had successfully secured its entire property using a tactic she hadn't heard discussed on any of the security coordination channels. She said, "We locked down our casino floor at 8:40 p.m., but instead of trying to secure people on the floor, we moved everyone up. Every person on that casino floor, approximately 6,000 people, we moved them to our hotel tower floors using our observation wheel evacuation experience." I said, "The high roller?" She said, "Exactly. The high roller is that big observation wheel on the Link property. We have evacuation protocols for if something goes wrong with the wheel, and we need to move 800 people off of it quickly through our tower structure. We used those exact protocols tonight. Moved 6,000 people from an open casino floor to secured hotel floors in 90 minutes. 0 casualties." I asked her to stay on the line and connected her directly to Marcus at the Security Operations Center, because what the Link did is replicable at other properties, and Marcus needed to hear about it immediately. At 10:32 p.m., I want to address something that I've been thinking about since this broadcast started, and that I'm going to say plainly, because plain is what works best when things are complicated. Las Vegas is not a city that gets a lot of respect from people who don't live here. It's easy to make jokes about Vegas being fake and superficial and built on vice, and about how nothing here is real except the money changing hands. And all of that is true in ways that vegans themselves would agree with. But tonight, the infrastructure that was built to move people efficiently through casinos to maximize gambling revenue is being used to move people safely through a zombie outbreak. The security systems that were built to catch card counters and thieves are being used to track infected and protect civilians. The coordination networks that were built to make sure competing casinos could work together during major events are being used to coordinate survival operations across 18 properties. The machine that was built to take your money is saving lives tonight because the machine is really good at what it does. And tonight, what it needs to do is move people and coordinate information and maintain order. And it turns out, those are exactly the things Vegas excels at. I'm not saying Vegas is noble. I'm saying Vegas is effective. And tonight, effective matters more than noble. At 10:35 p.m., Patricia from the Bellagio called in for the 3rd time. She said, "David, I need to tell you something. I just got a text from hotel management saying that guard and security teams are conducting floor-by-floor clearance in the tower, and they'll reach my floor within the next 60 to 90 minutes. They're telling me to stay in my room with the door locked until I hear 3 knocks, followed by identification. She said, "It's happening. Help is actually coming." I said, "It was always coming, Patricia. It just took time to organize. You did exactly what you needed to do by staying in your room and waiting." She said, "I'm going to keep listening until they knock. I need to hear your voice when they get here." "You'll hear it. I promise." At 10:38 p.m., the infected count across the strip was updated by the Security Operations Center based on comprehensive surveillance data from all cooperating properties. Total confirmed infected, approximately 270. Immobile due to degradation, approximately 115. Still mobile but degraded, approximately 85. Acute and actively dangerous, approximately 70. Contained or eliminated by security and guard operations. Unknown, but believed to be significant based on the reduction in new incident reports. 70 acute infected across the strip. 3 hours ago, there were an estimated 40. The math hasn't overwhelmed us. The transmission cycles were disrupted by early lockdowns, by effective security response, by people like Marco, who barricaded doors and didn't open them, by casino architecture that allowed for sectioning and containment. The math didn't overwhelm us because Vegas didn't let it. At 10:41 p.m., James from the Bellagio service corridor called back. He said, "David, a guard team just reached our loading dock. They cleared the approach, and they're extracting the 40 people from the dining room right now." He said, "I'm watching it on our monitor. The team came through. They secured the dining room. They're moving people out through the kitchen and through our corridor to the loading dock. It's working." I asked, "How long did they say it would take?" He said, "They said 20 minutes for the 40 people. Then they said they're coming back for the 23 of us in the service area once the dining room is clear." He said, "David, we're getting out." "Yes, you are, James. Yes, you are." At 10:44 p.m., the convention center evacuation began. The first buses loaded with attendees from the main exhibition hall. Guard escort established. Route to Nellis secured and cleared by Metro and Guard units working in advance of the convoy. 11,847 people moving in organized groups over the next 6 hours to a military base where they'll be assessed, sheltered, and eventually released once exposure concerns are addressed. That's Vegas coordination at scale. That's what this city can do when it decides something needs to be done professionally. At 10:47 p.m., I'm looking at Izzy, who has been at her board for 3 hours and 9 minutes without a break, monitoring 5 radio channels and social media, and coordinating with her network of contacts across the strip, and managing our tip line and eating what is probably her 3rd hamburger of the night. And I want to say something about Izzy Santos that she's going to be mad at me for saying, but which needs to be said anyway. Izzy grew up in Vegas. Her parents worked casino security. She knows this city not as a place you visit, but as a place you survive, because living in Vegas means learning how to live in a city that's designed for people who leave. Izzy stayed, and tonight she's using every piece of knowledge she has about how this city works to help me give people information that keeps them alive. If this broadcast has helped you, you should know that 40% of the reason it's helped you is sitting at that board right there, running 5 channels and writing notes and coordinating contacts and making sure that every piece of useful information reaches this microphone. Thank you, Izzy. She looked up and said, "You're going to make me cry, and I don't have time to cry. Keep broadcasting." At 10:53 p.m., the temperature in Vegas dropped to 92 degrees. The overnight low is forecast for 86, which in Vegas in July is as cool as it gets, and which means the heat advantage that the infected have been operating under is gradually diminishing. Dr. Chun called at 10:55 p.m. to confirm what the temperature drop means tactically. She said, the infected who are still mobile are going to degrade faster as the temperature drops. The combination of time since transition and decreasing ambient temperature is going to accelerate their decline. By midnight, when we're down to around 88 degrees, even the most recently transitioned infected are going to be showing significant motor impairment. By 2 a.m., when we're at the overnight low, any infected still active will be in extreme late-stage degradation. She paused. She said, "Time and temperature are on our side now, David. The question is just whether we can hold positions until both of those factors finish the job." At 10:58 p.m., I broadcast that with a practical addition. If you are secure right now, every hour you remain secure is an hour closer to the outdoor infected population becoming completely immobile. The overnight temperature is going to do work that bullets and security personnel would otherwise have to do. Let it. At 11:02 p.m., the Luxor clearing operation reached the 10th floor and reported that the operation was proceeding ahead of schedule due to better than expected cooperation from the people in hotel rooms and fewer active infected in the tower structure than initially feared. The revised timeline for complete Luxor clearance, approximately midnight to 1 a.m., instead of the originally estimated 2 a.m. That's 11,000 people in hotel rooms who followed instructions, stayed calm, stayed locked in, and made the operation faster and safer by doing exactly what they were asked to do. That kind of civilian cooperation during crisis is not automatic. It's the result of clear information being distributed effectively and people trusting that the information is worth following. At 11:05 p.m., Marcus called with an update that I want to share because it represents the moment when Vegas security started feeling confident enough about the situation to begin planning for recovery rather than just response. He said, "David, we're starting to talk about how we reopen properties. Not tonight, not tomorrow. But we're talking about what day 3 or day 4 looks like, what the cleaning protocols are, what the medical assessments are, how we verify that buildings are safe for guests to return to." He said, "That conversation is happening because we believe we're past the crisis peak and into the management phase." I asked, "How confident are you?" He said, 80%, which in the middle of a zombie outbreak on the Las Vegas Strip is about as confident as you can be about anything. At 11:08 p.m., Patricia's floor was reached by the clearing team. She texted Izzy because she didn't want to interrupt the broadcast by calling, but Izzy read me the text, and it said, "They knocked 3 times. They identified themselves. They cleared my floor. I'm safe. I'm actually safe. Tell David thank you. Patricia, you're welcome. And thank you for staying in your room and trusting that help would come. You made the right decisions all night." At 11:11 p.m., the convention center evacuation was proceeding on schedule, with approximately 2,000 people moved to buses in the first 25 minutes of operations. The pace was being deliberately controlled to prevent bottlenecks and to maintain security assessment protocols at every stage. 6 hours for 11,847 people is slow by normal evacuation standards. But normal evacuation standards don't include verifying that none of the evacuees are infected. At 11:14 p.m., I took a call from someone who identified himself as Robert Chun, pit boss at the Aria, who wanted to tell me about something that happened on his casino floor that he said represents the best and worst of Vegas in the same moment. He said, "David, at 8:30 p.m. when we were implementing lockdown, I had a high-limit player at my tables who was up approximately $400,000. The player wanted to color up and cash out and leave, standard procedure. But we were in lockdown and cage operations were suspended because we were moving personnel to security positions. So I told the player, 'Your chips are good whenever we reopen. Come back tomorrow, next week, next month, we'll honor them.' The player said, 'I might not be here tomorrow.' I said, 'Then give me your name and your contact information, and if something happens to you, we'll make sure your family gets the money.' Robert paused. He said, 'The player did that, gave me all the information, and then stayed at the table and kept playing because the player said, If I'm going to die in a zombie outbreak in Las Vegas, I might as well die playing blackjack. I asked, did the player make it? Robert said, the player is currently up 600,000 and is still at my table because we kept the high-limit room open and the player never left. That's Vegas. That's exactly Vegas. At 11:17 p.m., the Joint Security Operations Center made the decision to begin controlled access to the Strip for media and essential personnel, establishing a perimeter at the north and south ends that would allow verified vehicles to enter for the purpose of documenting the response and maintaining essential services. This is the first indication that the Strip is transitioning from crisis containment to recovery operations. Izzy's media contacts started arriving at the perimeter at 11:23 p.m., and the first live television footage from the Strip since lockdown began at 11:26 p.m. The footage showed guard units on the street, empty sidewalks that would normally be packed with tourists, casino properties with their exterior lights on, but their entrances controlled by security and guard personnel. The Strip looked like itself, and nothing like itself simultaneously. All the lights, none of the people. The machine running on idle while the inside was being cleared and secured. At 11:29 p.m., James and his 23 colleagues from the Bellagio service corridor were extracted by the guard team that had promised to come back for them. James called me from a guard staging tent at 11:32 p.m., and the first thing he said was, I didn't think I'd ever be happy to see the parking lot of the Bellagio, but right now, it looks pretty good. I asked, everyone from your group make it out? He said, all 23. All safe, he said. And David, the 40 people from the dining room, all of them made it too. All 63 people in our section of the Bellagio walked out tonight because the guard came for us when they said they would. That's what organized response looks like. Promises kept. Operations executed. People saved. At 11:35 p.m., the infected count was updated again. Total active infected still mobile. Approximately 40, down from 30 minutes ago. The combination of guard operations, casino security neutralizations, and natural degradation had reduced the acute threat by more than 50% in the past hour. By midnight, based on current trajectory, the acute mobile infected population might be down to 20 or fewer. 20 mobile infected across the 4 miles of the Strip and the adjacent properties. That's manageable numbers. That's cleanup rather than crisis. At 11:38 p.m., Dr. Chun called with what she described as her final medical update of the evening, unless something changes significantly. She said, David, I've now been monitoring Vegas outbreak patients for 4 hours. The data is consistent. Bite to transition, 20 to 25 minutes. Peak mobility window, 50 to 70 minutes in outdoor heat, 90 to 120 minutes in climate control. Complete immobility, 2 to 2.5 hours post-transition in all cases. The Vegas heat created faster onset, but also faster degradation. The math worked in our favor once we contained the initial transmission cycles. She paused. She said, and the wound decontamination protocols are holding at approximately 75% effectiveness with immediate intervention. That's the closest thing to good news we have tonight. People who received immediate aggressive wound care survived. I thanked her for staying on the line all night and for providing information that probably saved lives by helping people make better decisions faster than they would have without medical context. She said she was just doing what doctors do during crisis, which is try to keep people alive using whatever information and resources are available. At 11:41 p.m., I want to do something I don't normally do, which is talk directly about the numbers. Because the numbers matter, and because understanding them helps people understand what actually happened tonight versus what could have happened. Estimated population on the Strip and immediate area at 7:47 p.m. Approximately 320,000 people. Estimated total infected over the course of the outbreak, approximately 300, based on confirmed incident reports and security data. That's less than 0.1% of the population. Estimated civilian casualties. The number is still being determined, but early reports suggest between 70 and 120 people, which is devastating, and which is also dramatically lower than it could have been if the security response had been slower or less coordinated, or if the casino architecture had been less containable. 320,000 people, 300 infected, 100 casualties. Those are terrible numbers in human terms. In mathematical terms, for an outbreak that started in the highest density entertainment district in America, they're evidence that organized response and effective containment actually work. At 11:44 p.m., Izzy showed me something on her phone that made both of us stop for a moment. The Las Vegas Tourism Board had issued a statement, which is either the most tone-deaf or the most Vegas thing I've ever seen, depending on how you look at it. The statement said, Las Vegas is cooperating fully with local, state, and federal authorities in response to today's incident. The safety of our visitors and residents is our highest priority. We anticipate resuming normal operations across affected properties within 72 to 96 hours, pending security and medical clearances. Las Vegas remains open for business. Las Vegas remains open for business. Izzy said, that's the most Vegas sentence ever written. I said, is it though? Because it's also accurate. The parts of Vegas that weren't affected by the outbreak never closed. And the parts that were affected are already planning how to reopen. That's not tone deaf. That's exactly what Vegas is. At 11:47 p.m., the temperature dropped to 89 degrees. The overnight low was approaching. The heat that had been part of tonight's story since 7:47 p.m. was finally breaking, and with it, the environmental advantage that the infected had been operating under. Every infected individual still mobile was fighting against time, temperature, and their own degrading biology. And they were losing. At 11:50 p.m., Angela Reyes from the Link called back to report that her property had been fully cleared by joint security operations and was being prepared for guest return pending final medical assessment. She said, we moved 6,000 people to safety tonight using protocols we developed for a Ferris wheel evacuation. That sentence is going to be in my resume forever. I told her it should be. What the Link did was creative problem solving under pressure using available resources, which is exactly what crisis response should be. At 11:53 p.m., I'm looking at the clock and realizing we've been on the air for 4 hours and 6 minutes. Izzy and I have been in this studio running this broadcast continuously since 7:47 p.m., providing information to a city that needed information faster than official sources could provide it, coordinating with security professionals and medical personnel, and people trapped in hotel rooms and service corridors, being the voice that Patricia needed to hear, and that James needed to hear, and that 320,000 people needed to hear if they were listening. And we're not done yet, because midnight is 8 minutes away, and the overnight temperature is still dropping, and the guard is still clearing, and the convention center is still evacuating, and the strip is still transitioning from crisis to recovery. But we're close. We're very close. At 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes before midnight, the Luxor reported completion of their full property clearance. All hotel tower floors secured. All 11,000 people accounted for. Casino floor and lower levels cleared and confirmed safe. 0 remaining active infected in the building. The pyramid that locked down at 7:40 p.m., 4 hours and 18 minutes ago, that contained 15,000 people and an unknown number of infected, that became the most complex tactical problem on the Strip, had been completely cleared and secured through methodical floor-by-floor operations that prioritized safety over speed and got everyone out alive who was going to get out alive. Izzy's Luxor contact sent one final text at midnight exactly. It said, we did it. Yes, you did. At midnight, 03 a.m., the Las Vegas Strip crossed into Sunday morning. Saturday night in Vegas, a night that brings in more revenue than any other night of the week. The night when the Strip is at maximum capacity and maximum energy and maximum everything that Vegas does. Ended with guard units on the street and empty casinos, and 320,000 people either secured in buildings or evacuated to Nellis, or sitting in their cars on the I-15, waiting for NHP to organize the return to movement. The Strip didn't die tonight, but it came closer than it has since it was built. At midnight, 06 a.m., the Joint Security Operations Center issued its first official stand-down order. Selected properties that had completed full security clearance were authorized to begin limited operations, which meant reopening hotel towers for guest access, resuming limited food service, and preparing for the eventual resumption of casino operations, pending final health department clearances. Limited operations. Not full reopening, not business as usual, but the machine starting to turn over again. At midnight 09 a.m., Marcus called for what he said would probably be his last update of the night, unless something changed dramatically. He said, "David, from a security perspective, we're transitioning from active response to recovery operations. The acute threat has been neutralized. We have mop-up operations continuing for the next several hours. We have medical assessments and facility cleanings that will take days, but the crisis phase is over." He said, "Vegas held." I asked him, what was the difference tonight? Why did this work when it could have been so much worse? He said, honest answer? Casino security in Vegas is better than people think it is, because it has to be better than people think it is. We move millions of people through billions of dollars every week, and we do it in buildings that are designed to be confusing, and we do it safely because we're good at this. Tonight we just applied those same skills to something worse than card counters. He paused. He said, and also because Vegas doesn't quit. This city was built in a place that should be uninhabitable, and it exists anyway, because people decided it would exist. That's the city's defining characteristic. It doesn't quit. At midnight 12 a.m., Dr. Chun called with her final update. She said, UMC has treated 42 bite victims tonight. 6 of those victims died before reaching us or during treatment. 32 are in stable condition after immediate wound decontamination. 4 are in critical condition and under intensive monitoring. The 75% survival rate with immediate intervention is holding. She said, I don't have a lot of wins tonight, David, but that's one. People who got immediate wound care lived. I thanked her for everything she'd done tonight, for staying on the line, for providing information that helped people make better decisions, for treating patients while simultaneously serving as a medical resource for an entire city. She said, that's what trauma centers do. We show up and we try. Tonight we got to try. At midnight 15 a.m., the convention center evacuation reached its midpoint with approximately 6,000 people successfully moved to Nellis, and the remaining 5,800 in organized queues awaiting their buses. The operation was running smoothly. No incidents, professional coordination between all agencies involved. By 3 or 4 a.m., all 11,847 would be at Nellis being assessed and sheltered. At midnight 18 a.m., I received a call from someone I want to name because his story represents something important about tonight. His name is David Chun, the high-limit player at the Aria who was up $400,000 at 8:30 p.m. and who stayed at the table through the outbreak because if he was going to die in Vegas, he was going to die playing blackjack. He said, David, I'm still at the table. I'm up $850,000. The pit boss just told me they're going to start limited operations in about an hour, and cage services will be available then. I'm going to cash out, and I'm going to leave, and I'm never coming back to Vegas because I love this city, and tonight was the most terrifying night of my life, and I can't imagine ever feeling the same way about this place again. He paused. He said, but I want you to know that the people working this casino tonight The security who kept us safe, the pit boss who stayed at his post, the dealers who kept dealing because it kept people calm. They were professionals. They were scared like everyone else, but they did their jobs and were alive because of it. I told him, David, you should take your $850,000 and leave and never come back if that's what you need to do. But you should also know that the Vegas you saw tonight, the Vegas that kept dealing cards during a zombie outbreak, because keeping people calm mattered, that's the real Vegas, not the fake one, the real one. He said he'd think about that. I believe him. At midnight 23 a.m., the temperature reached 86 degrees, the overnight low. The heat that had defined tonight's outbreak characteristics had fully broken. Any infected still mobile were operating in conditions that were actively degrading them at maximum rate. Dr. Chun's prediction that by the overnight low, any remaining infected would be in extreme late degradation was proving accurate. The strip was cooling down, and the infected were stopping. At midnight 26 a.m., the final active infected count, 7. 7 mobile infected remaining across the entire strip and adjacent properties. 7 individuals out of the original, estimated 40 from the first wave, through multiple transmission cycles that produced approximately 300 total infected over the course of 4.5 hours. 7. That's not a crisis. That's mop up. At midnight 29 a.m., Izzy stood up from her board for the first time in 4 hours and 42 minutes. She looked at me and said, I need to walk around for about 90 seconds, and then I'm going to eat another hamburger, and then I'm going back to the board because we're staying on until someone tells us we can go off. I said, we're staying on until Vegas doesn't need us anymore. She said, good. She walked around the studio for 90 seconds, came back with a hamburger from the bag she'd brought 4.5 hours ago that had somehow stayed even marginally warm, and sat back down at her board and put her headphones back on. That's Izzy Santos. That's exactly Izzy Santos. At midnight 33 a.m., I want to talk to every person who's been with us since 7:47 p.m., who has been listening for 4 hours and 46 minutes while we've told you about the outbreak and the response and the security operations and the medical data and the guard arrival and the people in hotel rooms and service corridors and convention center halls and casino high-limit rooms who survived tonight by making smart decisions with incomplete information. You made it. If you're hearing my voice right now, you made it. You're on the other side of the crisis and in the recovery phase, and the sun is going to come up in approximately 5.5 hours, and Vegas is going to look different in daylight than it looked in the dark, but it's going to be there. The buildings are there. The lights are there. The people are mostly there. The city held. And if this broadcast was part of what helped you hold, if KLA S94.5 was the frequency that kept you connected to something larger than the locked room you were sitting in, and we're glad we were here. Subscribe if you're watching this later. Comment where you were tonight. Tell us what you saw. And support local radio, because tonight is exactly why it exists. At midnight 37 a.m., Patricia called one final time. She said, David, I'm in a guard bus heading to Nellis. I'm with about 40 other people from my hotel floor. We're all safe. We're all going to be assessed and sheltered and eventually released. She said, I need to tell you something. When I was in my room, and I could hear things in the hallway, the only thing that kept me from completely losing it was your voice on my phone telling me to stay in my room and wait, and that help was coming. She said, thank you for being the voice. Patricia, you're welcome. And thank you for trusting that staying was the right call, even when every instinct said to run. You survived tonight because you made smart decisions. Be proud of that. At midnight 40 a.m., the last 7 infected individuals were either neutralized by guard operations or reached complete immobility from natural degradation. The Joint Security Operations Center confirmed at midnight 43 a.m., 0 remaining active infected across the strip and adjacent properties. The outbreak was over. 4 hours and 56 minutes. From 7:47 p.m. to 12:43 a.m. That's how long it took Las Vegas to go through a zombie outbreak from first incident to final clearance. That's how long 320,000 people held their positions while security and medical and military personnel did what they do. That's how long Vegas fought something that should have destroyed it, and instead just made it temporarily pause. At midnight 46 a.m., the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police issued their final statement of the night. It acknowledged the outbreak, confirmed the clearance, thanked the casino properties and security personnel, and guard and medical personnel, and the civilians who followed instructions and stayed calm and made the response possible. It estimated a return to normal strip operations within 4 days, pending final health and safety clearances. It provided contact information for family members seeking information about loved ones who are on the strip tonight and who they haven't heard from. And it ended with one sentence: Las Vegas remains operational. At midnight 50 a.m., I looked at Izzy and said, "We should probably sign off." She said, "Why? Is Vegas done needing information?" I said, "No, but we've been on for 5 hours and 3 minutes, and we're both exhausted, and the acute crisis is over." She said, "Then we're staying on until dawn, because someone out there is still in a hotel room, and still listening, and still needs to hear a voice. And that's what we do." She was right. At midnight 53 a.m., I'm going to do what I've been doing for 5 hours and 6 minutes, which is provide information to Vegas, and the information right now is this: the outbreak is over. The strip is secured. The recovery has begun. The city held. And the sun is going to come up in 5 hours and 7 minutes over the desert, where people decided 70 years ago to build something impossible. And that impossible thing took a hit tonight and survived and is already planning how to reopen on Tuesday. That's Vegas. That's exactly Vegas. This is KLA S 94.5 FM. This is David Morgan and Izzy Santos. We've been here since 7:47 p.m. and we'll be here until the sun comes up, because that's what we do. Hello, listener. Vegas is still standing. So are we.